Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Awkwardly Big Dice podcast, episode number 9, with your host Dan and my co-host Rob. I am looking a
All
bit
right.
misty on my cam all of a sudden. Just
Oh
give it a
yeah.
good little wipe. And now I've got a glare.
Welcome to the club.
It's right. It is fine. But welcome to episode 9 of the Awkwardly Big Dice podcast with the Glare Boys, because we both have glare. This is a podcast where we talk about Dungeons and Dragons and other things related to tabletop role-playing games. We have, I guess, a few things to talk about today. I haven't checked the news this week because there's generally nothing that really happens in the D&D world. And we get like maybe 5-10 minutes out of it if we do. But we can check in on at least one of the topics we talked about last week. We will kick off with a little bit of that, but before we jump in to talking about that, and me staring at the glare on my screen, we will mention that we are available on Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find us all on there. Twitch is where we live stream on Thursdays at 8 p.m. UK time, and you can watch our VODs on YouTube, slightly edited versions. Some changes coming up with regards to both of those, but we will probably talk about it a bit next week rather than covering it this week. But yes, you can check us out. We're all Awkwardly Big Dice on all those various social media places. Except for Twitter, we have to drop the C and it's just Awkwardly Big Die. But that is just down to character limit on Twitter, or X as it's called these days. Which is a horrible name, and I still refuse to call it that in my casual conversation.
No one's gonna ever call it X. It's stupid.
I would doubt it. But Rob, you have just purchased a few days ago now the new Planescape book, Adventures in the
Uh,
Multiverse.
I should have brought it upstairs. To be honest, it's downstairs on the shelf. Yeah. Funnily enough, with you saying that there wasn't much news to cover, and
Hmm?
seeing as though that book's now been out a week or so, I had a quick look online just to see if there was any drama. Like the Hadozi drama from
Hmm.
Spelljammers or something similar, but no one seems to be complaining about it online. I've seen a few brutally honest reviews, but I've not looked at them in all honesty. It's probably just clickbaity.
Hmm.
I had to flick through it. I only bought it on Tuesday, so 2 days ago. Um, I've not flicked through the campaign on purpose because a friend of mine said he might DM it at some point.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't particularly want to look at that. But the monster list is fantastic. I really love it. Um, it's really nice to see. It's nice to actually have something physical with actual lore for Sigil as well, because sometimes we've spoke about this before. When you're looking back for information on the wiki, it's all a bit scattered.
Hmm.
Um, so you then have to rely on people's videos on YouTube, and some of them are quite old.
Hmm.
Um, and you're like, how in date is this? And well, it's nice to just have a book with all the information that I'll need in it.
Generally, most lore videos on YouTube are up to date enough because
Yeah.
they'll all be 5th edition, and the lore hasn't changed for the most part in 5th edition. They're just covering stuff, bringing up stuff that they've done
Mhm.
in former editions, like Planescape or Spelljammers.
Exactly. But yeah, I'm loving it. I've not looked at much of the I know there's a few feats in there and a few backgrounds and things like that. I've not had time to really look at it. Um,
Hmm.
but some of the monsters are damn cool. The Melephant that we covered last week.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's I haven't looked any more. Well, I've looked a little bit. I've been doing some research in preparation for our Friday sessions. Just sort of, I guess, looking through, see if there's any monsters that I might use. There's a couple of things I'm likely to use, though. There's some. It's depends when and where. Um, if I can squeeze certain things in, or whether there's other variants elsewhere that are better. Um, but the book is, I mean, it's just adding more, from what I can
Mm,
tell, more stuff, like more monsters, more information. Like again, as we've said many times before, you don't have to use the lore that's in the book if you don't want to.
it's there
You
to
know,
help, but it's not mandatory.
yeah, the mechanics of the game and it all come from one book. It's like Player's Handbook. It's all there. I think a little bit of advice, extra help in others, like the Dungeon Master's Guide. Those are
Mm,
your, I would say, Dungeon Master Guide and the Player's Handbook and the Monster Manual. They're always been your core source books.
yeah.
But really, Player's Handbook is your Bible, even for DMs.
Mm,
But
yeah.
it's always good to have more tools, more monsters, more things to use to throw at your players, surprise them, and make it a fun game. I I will probably take a look through the adventure because I'm always kind of curious. I never generally read the entire thing just in case I ever do get to play or get to run it. Obviously, if I
Yeah.
run it, then if I DM it, I'll then read it all. But
If
generally,
you're
I
running, you can
don't.
go back and read it. But if you're going to be a player, there's always a chance. So
Hmm. Usually, as a player, I'll only read like the first. I can't remember what they break it down to, but like chapter,
yeah,
because it gives you a good idea of the structure and how it's built. It's like I didn't really care for the Spelljammers one.
I didn't like the
Um,
Spelljammer's one.
yeah, I wasn't a fan. So but I only read to be fair, I don't think I read the full. I read up to a certain point, and I was just like, I don't
Mm,
like this. It will have appeal to certain players, certain DMs, especially if you kind of like something that it felt a little railroady. At least the openings can often feel that way.
yeah.
Um, but there was just, I don't know, just couldn't put my finger on it why I didn't like it. Um, but then maybe I'm just too used to homebrew, and that's my
Yeah,
own
that
problem.
can be a problem for sure. I think as well. I don't know. I mean, I've read the first like page um, of the Planescape,
Mm,
I suppose, adventure,
yeah.
um, just to have a bit of a look at. And I like the way it started. It seemed like a pretty cool way to start
Mm,
it. Um, Spoiler alert: it basically starts with you all in a morgue.
okay, that's cool.
Um, I won't go any further than that, but you can pretty much guess that where that's going to kind of lead, and
Hmm.
um, it's it's an I like it as a starting point. It's one I've not used before. I've used quite a few different starts or had them used on me. Um, I'm typically a fan of when you start an adventure to do it either in transit already, uh, so kind of a bit like a Skyrim start
Mm,
almost. You're on a cart, you're going this place, or you've taken a job to escort this caravan
hmm.
from one place to another. I think that's how Fandelver starts, isn't it?
Yes,
Um,
yes, delivering Lost Minds, yeah.
yeah. Or you're on a boat, you're going somewhere. Um, I think those work quite well, just because it stops the players having to decide what to do,
Mm,
at least for that first thing, and they can kind of just focus on. If you're starting a campaign where people don't know each other yet, they always have that bit of a jittery start because
mm,
they're kind of feeling each other out a little bit, um, whilst also trying to get into their own characters and trying to get to know their own characters because you've got this idea for a backstory and a character, but you've not yet improved with it. So I think they're quite good. But yeah, seems pretty good.
Cool. Yeah, that was always my kind of thing with the Spelljammer one, was that it was like you start in whichever town you want. It has to be like I think it said it has to be like a coastal town or something like that. And it was just like, okay, that's all right. And then the town gets hit by a load of stuff from space, and you're trying to get out and get away, and you're like, well, there's so much room to do whatever you want in that. You don't have to do anything that would point you in the direction that you need to go for the adventure to work. Even if there's like a person who goes, "Ah, come with me, I can get us out," you're gonna go. You can still say no and do your own thing.
Yeah.
So it becomes a case of trying to wrangle your party a little bit if that's the case. So you end up having to go, you then do this and you do this, and which you shouldn't be doing as a dungeon master.
Yeah, I think I'd probably just have to edit that to throw a couple of quick options at players and give that um, kind of illusion of choice and like let them decide what maybe again maybe a little bit like the start of Skyrim at Helgen where you're picking
Hmm.
the person to follow, but ultimately it doesn't really make that much of a difference.
No.
uh, and use that to kind of draw them off in a direction and start some sort of adventure there. But yeah, making them go bang, what do you want to do? That's tough for players to deal with if they're not experienced.
Yeah, it just I don't know. It wasn't my cup of tea. I really like the way that I have started our current campaign. I got to try it out with like a two shot, so
Yeah,
I knew it could work, and it is something I've stolen from um Brennan Lee Mulligan. And I mean other DMs I'm sure online have done it, but it's him who I saw it do it first, and I thought that is a really good way to get things started, as long as you're able to then convene your players after. But it gives, so for context, the way we started our current campaign in the city of Stormere was that I did a little section of everybody's backstory, essentially. I did like a flashback for each character to start off with. You don't have to do a literally flashback if you're doing it in your own adventure. You could do it as something that's literally just taken place, or the lead up to whatever meeting there is going to be of the confluence of players. But I did a little bit of flashback for each person, so they got an opportunity to roleplay, improv on their own in a scene that they've essentially designed as part of their backstory. So they're familiar with it, so they can fall back on things that they've done or written. And then we flash off to someone else's, and then eventually we go, all right, we're going to start in this sort of um, basement cellar speakeasy for mercenaries. So basically, start in a tavern,
basically, yeah.
all
The
classic.
treasure freezer.
Yeah, where you guys are all sitting at the bar and they're sort of familiar with each other, which was just like a couple. Let's just like a few friends hanging out. That was pretty much
Yeah,
how we started. Kept it easy, kept it simple, and we made sure everyone had a backstory that would allow that as well, for the
yeah,
most
yeah.
part.
We kind of session zeroed that out to make sure it'd work. Yeah, I definitely agree that that's a really good way to start it. Um, it definitely had a knock-on effect on that two shot and turned it into a four shot though.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it if you're going like a one or two shot. It's
it was great to start a campaign with, like
great to start a
fantastic.
campaign. Yes, worked as for campaign. Doesn't particularly work if you're short on time. Um,
So, well,
I get it's something for
there
people
was
to
multiple
learn
factors.
via my mistake. Like, like
Yeah,
I didn't expect it to take so as long as it did, and it
no,
no, it
no, it was
did.
good. We were trying something new.
Good.
I think what I liked about it was that it enabled us all to role play that scene, whatever scene was our scene out. Um, it was informative to the rest of the group without having to have that initial "this is me, this is my backstory" conversation, because
Mhm.
that always feels a bit fake.
Mhm.
And it it really kind of helped people have a moment and just like get to know their characters a little bit, which I mentioned earlier. Like I'm quite good with that. Like I put a lot of thought into my characters, and I spend far too long thinking about them.
Mm.
Not everybody has the mind that works that way or has the time to spare to do that.
Yeah.
Um, so it gave that little it just yeah it just broke the seal a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. It did. I was careful with kind of the order in which I did it.
mm,
I wanted. We had two new players and two veterans. Rob being one of the veterans, and Rob was the person I chose first as the most experienced and also probably the most comfortable with improv, and also someone who had already acted out that scene before. So we were
yeah,
we were doing a scripted scene almost. It wasn't. We improved it. I think we did better the second time. I would think. It was much more of a negotiation the second time, which
yeah.
when you had to negotiate with the Green Reaper.
I did got kind of what I wanted, and they got kind of what they wanted,
Well,
and
yeah, I guess they wanted to escort you to the next life, but you
I
talked
guess
your
they
way out
didn't get what they wanted then, did they?
of it.
No, they definitely didn't get
I
what they
don't know
wanted.
if I don't think the Reapers of my world particularly have wants, to be honest. More of like acting by nature and instinct.
Yeah, bless them,
But as
bastards.
the password to that tavern says it all, really, doesn't it?
Yes, yes. What was it?
Death comes to us all.
Death comes for us all, to us all.
It was to us all, for us all, comes us all. Who knows, something like that. But yeah. Uh, probably end the campaign, I think. Maybe if it's
Oh
uh,
yeah, for sure. I've already decided he needs to die at some point, at an appropriate time,
at an
if
appropriate time.
possible.
Yeah, yeah.
Dice, dice go the right way. I just feel like it would be the natural end to his story.
Hmm. Read. So we'll actually go on to our topics. We did talk a little bit about Planescape and then completely went off a little,
Yeah,
along with not a little, that's a lot. So that
that was a full tangent.
was a full tangent. That's just the way my brain works, apparently. But we will move on to cover our next topics. We have, as per usual, a spell of the week and a monster of the week. I have chosen a spell. Rob has chosen a monster this week. We are going to roll, and the winner chooses who goes first, because that's, I guess, how we do it. Um, I'm gonna go with yellow dice because I haven't rolled me yellow dice for. I actually rarely use these in the game. Actually, I don't know why.
I'm gonna go with pink. Well,
Pink.
pinky, purpley swirliness.
Yes. Right.
I got these from Goblin.
Go. Oh, you're going to win.
I mean, I probably am, yeah, because I got a 17.
This is why I don't roll the yellow dice. 'Cause, eh,
Oh,
boop-a-doo-boo.
wow, you got betrayed.
I got betrayed. I said I don't know why I don't use them. I didn't curse them out or anything. They just turned against me.
Which order did we go last week? We
Uh,
went me first last week, actually, and I
yeah,
did the
yeah.
spell.
hmm
I'll go first this week with the monster this time.
Yeah, you
So,
always go first.
yeah, well, the
Yeah.
dice just moved me.
The dice gods chose, and they choseth Rob.
So, my monster, I suppose you could say,
Mhm,
of the week is from the new book. From I always want to say Plane Chase because that's an old Magic the Gathering thing, but it's Planescape.
Like
And
landscape, but plains.
yes, um, from the Planescape books. It's a kind of a a faction of monsters. I've picked one of them in particular just because it's the highest challenge rating of the three that are in the book, and they are called the Rilmani, Rilmani. I don't know if I'm saying that correct, but
Seems right to
I'm,
me.
assu- I'm assuming I am. And this is the Aurumach Rilmani. Now, the Aurumach Rilmani. The Rilmani, I like them a lot because they're kind of alien. They're technically celestials, but they don't work with that kind of angelic vibe, nor do they work with the other weird celestials that are like the floating elephant things and all the other various weird designs.
Yeah, for furries.
Yeah, these remind me of a kind of a more angelic, I suppose, or more celestial looking version of some sort of eldritch horror. Like they're made from different parts. They're slightly weird in their design. They're humanoid in general, but there's like holes in them.
Hmm.
They remind me a little bit of some of the later designs for the Eldrazi and Magic the Gathering, which again is another wizard thing. So it's not necessarily
Hmm.
surprising. Um, and Yeah, I think they're really interesting. They are agents of neutrality.
Yeah, neutral. Neutral agents. They are the preservers. What's it say? Yeah, preservation of cosmic status quo.
Yes, they want balance in all things between order, chaos, and so forth and so on. They hang out, they chill out in the outer plane. Um, they
The Outlands.
in the outlands, close to the extremely tall mountain that Sigil sits atop of or floats atop of, the giant donut that it is,
Spire.
the spire. And they supposedly have many agents and spies out in the world, or in the many worlds and planes, just ensuring that no force of chaos or order or good or evil or anything in between gains too much momentum, that everything is kept in a somewhat balanced way. They very, very rarely interact. According to the description of this, I remember reading from the book, I'll read this out. The Romani protect the balance between the forces and philosophies of the multiverse. They seek to maintain planar equilibrium, assuring that good, evil, law, or chaos never grow too powerful or too weak. To the Romani, each of these forces is fundamental to the multiverse's existence. Whenever one threatens to tip the balance in its favour, or a plane is on the verge of collapse, the Romani act to even the odds. While the Rilmani might be found anywhere, they're most frequently encountered on their home plane, the Outlands, where they work to ensure that no force overexerts itself on the concordant opposition. The Rilmani are bipedal, in other words, two legs, with bodies of living metal that range in appearance from cold iron to brilliant gold. Most have smooth faces and few features, and they're extraordinary anatomies. I can't read that word. Uh,
Anatomies.
Anatomies, yeah, that was not going for me. Often act in defiance of natural forces, and I like it. They're very kind of alien-esque.
Hmm.
Now, the reason I particularly picked the Aurumach Rilmani is not because it's the highest challenge rating or it's because it's the boss, but it's similar to what you said last week for the Melephant.
Hmm.
I noticed it, especially with you pointing it out once I got my hands on the book and had a good read. I really feel that its challenge rating fits it.
Hmm. Stuff.
Its challenge rating 17.
Yeah.
It's got 18 AC, 285 HP, but could I quite easily have more than that because it's 30d10 plus 120 if you want to randomize it or if you just want to maximize it. It just hovers, flies around at 40-foot movement, so it's not the easiest thing to get away from. Pretty good stats: 20 strength, 21 dex, high con, high in. In fact, the lowest stat at 16 is wisdom. I mean, sorry, charisma. Um, So all across the board, it's good. It has the standard damage resistance from bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks, but also psychic. So it resists psychic.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't resist poison, which is interesting,
It's very
and it's
interesting.
not immune to it either. It has no immunities. It has all languages, and I kind of assumed they would, and I'm not surprised to see this. Telepathy at 120 feet,
Mm-hmm.
true sight at 120 feet, and a passive perception of 20. So for things that are supposed to maintain balance, it sees everything. That kind of makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's got a multi attack. It manifests a gleaming blade, and it can attack 3 times with it. So the manifested blade, it hits pretty hard, to be honest. It hits at +11 to hit, so it's unlikely to really miss with sort of an average roll. You have to roll pretty low to be missing even your high AC characters. It has 10-foot reach, which is quite good because, as I said, it's kind of manifesting this floating blade around it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it hits you for 48 plus 5 force damage.
Force is a
Not
good
many
one.
things are going to. Yeah, force is a real good one.
I was thinking about. I just when you were talking, I was thinking because force is you know, it's weird. It tells me a story, right? So force,
Yeah,
we've talked about damage resistances and immunities before. And when something uses force damage and it's essentially a melee attack, but it's force, it's almost like saying this is something that is built to kill everything or can
yeah,
kill everything because nothing really resists its attacks. Well, that's what I
yeah.
read into it.
Yeah, I agree. There's not much that is resisting that. I think I've seen one thing that was immune to force, and it was like some weird set of armor that's in the monster manual. I'd have to have a look back at it. I
Mm.
just remember using Steel Wind Strike one time and being woefully disappointed that I didn't hit anything because everything was immune to force damage. Yeah, so it's hitting you for pretty hard force damage. If it's not close enough to hit you with its floating blade, uh, it's got the Gleaming Ray, which has 120-foot range, again +11 to hit, and does 3d12 plus 5 force damage. And it can attack with that 3 times, or its blade 3 times, or any order you choose. It just says it makes 3 manifested blade or Gleaming Ray attacks. So
Mhm.
you can hit and down one player and then pew pew another player or
Mm.
whatever you want to do. It does have some spell casting. Uh,
Yeah,
it's got
ones that are
the
kind of
kind of
obvious,
things.
really. Or
Yeah, you'd
some of
expect.
it's telepathic. Telepathic.
Detect magic and detect thoughts at will. Again, sorry, Will, you're always
Mm.
the target. But it does have some other ones that again you'd kind of expect, but also might be slightly surprising. So fly, it already has fly. It just makes itself better at flying, I guess,
Yeah,
or it could.
yeah. It's up and over
The
20
other,
feet.
well, yeah, the other Rilmani, the little ones,
Mm.
they don't fly. So I suppose if this one appears with the others, it could make one of the others
That's
fly
true.
or whatever. And it's got uh, Gaius. I think I
Mhm.
always say this wrong. Gaius, slow, and suggestion. They are extremely controlling spells. Those two of which are charms, one of which
Mm.
is just a very powerful control spell in slow. Um, so in some ways I'm not surprised, but in other ways I am slightly surprised to see like control, like actual like controlling your player type spells almost. I know like dominate is the one that actually controls,
Mhm.
and suggestion is a more like slightly peaceful variant of it. And then Geas is a good one. I've used that before, and it's basically a spell where you charm somebody and tell them not to do something, and
Mm.
then when they go ahead and they do it, they take a buttload of psychic damage
Mhm.
for doing it, and that lasts for an extremely long time. I think it's a month that it lasts. Um, I did it to Stephen's Ranger Woody
You did.
in the
Yeah, 30 days.
it's a Strad. Yeah, it's and it that psychic damage will happen once per day. So if they try and repeat the action the next day, thinking I can do that now, I've had one nosebleed. That's surely all I'm going to get. No, it'll do it again. It's a useful spell. And then they've got some bonus actions as well. Aura of Blades. They can give themselves a 10 feet aura of blades. It kind of does what it says on the tin. Um, you have to beat a 19 DC Dexterity saving throw if you approach them or start your turn there. I think it's start your turn. Yes, start creature starts its turn within 10 feet of them, taking 3d10 force damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. The blade disappear after 1 minute. When the Aurumach has the incapacitated condition, dies, or when it uses its bonus action to end it. So it's a nice little effect. And then it has Invoke Weakness, which is a recharge of 5 to 6. It's a bonus action. You essentially, on a target that it sees within 120 feet of itself, has to succeed on a DC 19 Wisdom saving throw or become cursed. The next until the end of the Aurumach's next turn. The next time the Aurumach hits the cursed creature with a manifested blade or gleaming ray attack, it takes an extra 68 force damage. 6d8. The average being 27, not 68. 6d8.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's force damage, and that kind of reminds me of smite spells.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of ways, there you activate it as a bonus action, then you shoot someone or hit someone
Yeah.
and do a load of extra damage. Recharging on a 5 and a 6 kind of weakens it a little bit, but it's a lot of damage to be able to pump out
Yeah, yeah.
on a
I think it's interesting because that like the Aura of Blades is a bit like Spirit Guardians to me. It's like kind of a different damage type. Um, it's a force damage type. It feels very much like a kind of like a Spirit Guardians, or there is a blades where you create an area full of blades, spinning blades. I can't remember what that's supposed
There
called.
is, yeah,
Hmm?
it's Wall of Blades or something like that.
It's something of blades. I can't remember what the first part is. Um, I don't know, but it's kind of a bit like that. Useful, sure, and I imagine that's probably what it's doing in the picture, maybe.
Looks like it, yeah, with a few of big golden blades.
Either that or that's just it manifesting blades. But yeah, cool. The creature is funny. I'm just looking at the art as well. The art looks like if you were to take the what are they called? The Kaminoans, the cloners from Star Wars, and turn them into robots. They've got long necks but little heads, then these long limbs.
I'm interested in who did the art for that because it really reminds me of.
But it's pretty cool. I mean, a lot of the art seems to be actually pretty good in Planescape. I quite like it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I really like it.
I like the theme of this one as well. It looks, not only is it pretty, and you can see the spire, and you can see sigil in the background. Um, it's overlooking the area, but whilst also looking back, it's just something about that also is really cool. Um, it makes it look kind of massive, but even though if you know a little bit, you know that well, they're mountains, ergo it's not the size of mountains. We
No,
can easily
no.
tell that. The,
It
the
does make it look large though, for sure. It has a good size
uh,
to it.
it is a large creature, so
Yeah, yeah.
um,
It, interestingly, the picture also tells me something else. So before this book came out,
hmm,
and I was kind of low-key obsessed with Sigil, the City of Doors.
hmm,
I don't know why. I really liked the name, the City of Doors. It really
hmm,
sparked something in my imagination. So when I started researching it, and I heard that it's in the center of the Outlands,
hmm.
the outer plane that connects all of us. For some reason, I kind of imagined that plane to always be in like a state of darkness.
Alright.
I don't know why. I just kind of imagined it being like in a darkened astral environment,
Hmm.
almost kind of with a constant cosmos surrounding it.
I don't think there's a sun or anything. I think it is like I don't think you're wrong. I think it is supposed to be a very different sky than
Yeah.
you would find here on planet Earth.
But then it's just obviously seeing a very different rendition of that on the artwork there. You've got a sky with clouds.
Hmm.
Maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong. But it's interesting.
It could have clouds. I don't have any issue with clouds. I think even how you're talking about it, because it would have
Yeah,
if it's a plane of its own. It might have a weather system of its own. Nothing wrong with that. I think it's what beyond the clouds that might be a. But if you start in Internal Darkness, there's no reason it can't be Internal Darkness if you wanted to. As the law's
Yeah,
flexible. Do what you want.
yeah, yeah. It's whatever you make it in it. At the end of the day,
I really,
um,
but I really like these. These things are interesting.
I like
Very
them a lot
interesting.
because they're typically neutral. You could do a lot with them in terms of a campaign setting. You could bring them in at um, almost last minute to save the players if a force was being so chaotic it was going to cause an extremely destructive effect on not just one plane but multiple
Mm,
planes. Remembering that you're in the Outland and whatever happens there could also impact other planes
mm,
because there's doors and bridges to many places. Um, you could have a BBEG that wants to corrupt them, that fears these things because they want to unbalance the scales of good and evil or chaos and law. You could find a one that has become so corrupt that it wants to seek um, ultimate neutrality, which is, I suppose, going a bit too far in the way of order and wanting
mm,
everything to be like dead, basically, kind of like the what were they called, the auditors in the Terry Pratchett books that just
mm.
want to stop time so that nothing can be chaotic.
Nothing changes, so there's no chaos.
Yeah, so they can commence with their audit basically. You could kind of see a lot of different ways to use these. They could even save the BBEG at the last minute if the players were going to tip the scales too far in the way of good, which is an interesting concept that they might actually step in
I do
to
like the idea of them being a
a
enemy
Deus
of the.
Machina.
Not so much because I always think that's a bit. I'm never a big fan.
No,
The players should deal with their consequences. As a consequence, old Uncle Consequence, as I keep bringing up in our own game of late, of the
yeah,
idea of players, especially if you're dealing with a party of murder hobos and stuff like that, of this guy just coming on, get this them coming in and just like laying your players out. Maybe not killing them, but like teaching them that lesson. You can kill them, I mean, if you want.
maybe kill one,
Or
just one.
put them near death. Maybe kill one of them. Put them near death at least. Make it a very difficult fight. Now you don't
Take a
necessarily have to
leg.
stick this particular Rilmani against them. This is the
Yeah,
top dog, but there are lesser ones you could throw at it.
absolutely.
So I do like the look of this fella, probably more than the others, if I'm honest. Um,
I
but
think they all have that charm.
mhm. I'm sure we'll cover them at some point. But yeah, the celestial type thing. This looks very. I mean, the art is selling me on on the celestialness of it.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, it's a really cool idea of a creature that is essentially there to, or it is its purpose is to maintain true neutrality, opposed to some of the like, because that'd be is it very interesting with them like them because modrons are covered again in Planescape. There's more modrons added,
they are. Yeah, there's
and they're a
loads.
creature of like lawful neutral. So their whole thing is lawful above order, above all else.
Yeah,
Um, to be two robots clashing with each other would be pretty epic. Um, and they like to go on their old parade every so often throughout the multiverse, do the modrons, and end up leaving some of theirs behind sometimes as they do as the parade marches, trying to sometimes violently bring order to the chaos.
mm,
Uh, it's quite funny as well because like with you got the modrons who are I think the modrons are less actively seeking, except for their every however often it is parade, um, less actively seeking lawful or order outside of Mechanicus. But you have on in the equal sort of to them is the Githzerai. So the Githzerai being an alternate of the Githyanki,
Oh yeah,
who
of course.
separated from them um, because they thought that Gith was a warmonger, basically, and so they went and followed Zerai or whoever or something like that. They're Zerai or something. I can't remember, but they went and followed him, and they're much more like obsessed with like order to the point they went to the plane of the opposite. So they went to Limbo, which is the plane of chaotic
Mm.
neutral or on. So it's at the 3 o'clock on the wheel, and they go there simply to try and bring order to that chaotic plane.
A lofty goal indeed.
And they managed to they have like monasteries that they've built, and they have these like islands within the chaos that are pure realms of order, and they just do it with their minds because they're all about psionics, but also being monks. So it kind of I really like the interplay.
Yeah,
Um,
that's an interesting one.
but yes, the obviously yeah, it's an interesting because it also like for me as well. I think with the real mind, it very much I don't know whether or not like the way I read it is almost like they live, especially these ones. Live in the Outlands, and they
Yeah.
seem to be maybe more concerned with the Outlands than anything else. Um,
The snippet in the book does say that they will fan out and
yeah,
and they'll intercede extremely rarely, I can't speak, extremely rarely, and always at the last minute in other
mhm,
planes. But they will do so if they need to, and they kind of it hints that they have almost a faction of mortals working for them, like spies and things like that.
mhm,
So again, it's not that's not too dissimilar from a similar kind of thing to a cult, I guess, where
yeah,
you can definitely use that kind of setting quite easily and have agents of the Rilmani, like agents of neutrality that are just showing up NPCs to try and get your players to stop being murder hobos or
yeah,
to work towards taking down maybe another party of murder hobos. Who knows?
yeah. More likely a demon lord trying to breach
Yes,
into the mortal plane because they're just all about chaos, aren't they? So
very much.
great opposition to bring in if you want to bring in someone like Orcus or um,
Or the Mushroom Lady.
Demogorgon or the Mushroom Lady, yeah, or Jubilix or any of the others, or Graz and whatnot. Yes, but yes, it's an interesting entity. We shall move on
Move on.
to my spell of the week. My spell of the week, coincidentally, is actually available with the Aurumach Rilmani, which is Detect Thoughts.
Of
Uh,
course.
Detect Thoughts. I wanted to do Detect Thoughts because I have some opinions on the spell with regards to how it's used generally. Um, but I'll cover the basics as we normally do. It's a second level divination spell. It is concentration. Do keep that in mind. It lasts for a minute, so it's an alright length. Some may argue it's a bit annoying if you're in a conversation because a minute doesn't really last all that long in conversation. So I guess you could use it sparingly. But it does only take an action to cast, um, and it can only be cast on yourself. It does have a material component as well. It's just a single copper piece. Whether you want to count that as a monetary value, I wouldn't. I don't. I would say you can use spellcasting focus for that. There's no reason. That's not a monetary value. It doesn't have GP next to it, so no. But yes, it's visual, semantic, and material components, so it requires all three.
Yes.
And Detect Thoughts is pretty much what most people think it is, but also not what most people think it is, as well at the same time.
It's a multifaceted spell for
It
sure.
is. So when you use your action, you basically can we go into the mind, view the thoughts of one creature within 30 feet of you. It doesn't work on anything that basically doesn't speak or is lower than a 3 intelligence.
Yeah, it has to be thoughts to detect.
Yes, there has to be a consciousness, I suppose, to detect. Let's start with you only do read surface thoughts. I'll go into some of my opinions on that shortly. Um, and but as an action, you can try and probe deeper. I think it's probe deeper into the creature's mind. If you choose to do that, that creature must make a Wisdom saving throw. Obviously, depending on what you are, whether you're a bard, sorcerer, wizard, or a great old one warlock, your DC can vary. But I know I know to be fair, that's probably more that changes with your level, less than with your class. If it fails, you basically are able to see into its deeper consciousness, its emotional state, and anything that looms large in its mind. If it succeeds, then the spell actually ends.
Yeah.
Either way, the target knows that you've been in its brain, you've been in its mind, and let's see. And unless you shift your attention to another creature's thoughts, the creature can use its action to make an intelligence check, contested by your intelligence check, and if it succeeds, the spell ends. Yeah. So yeah, they can basically kind of kill the spell. Um, it goes on to describe the nature of how it's supposed to work, which I think a lot of people do ignore. We'll cover that in just a moment. You can also detect the presence of creatures you can't see, which makes it a useful outside of roleplay, into a more dungeon divey, going through a map sort of thing. But you can try and detect any thoughts within 30 feet of you. It can penetrate barriers, but 2 feet of rock, 2 inches of metal, other than lead, or a thin sheet of lead blocks the spell, basically. You can't detect a creature with an intelligence of 3 or lower. It just covers that again. But once you detect it, you can read its thoughts, as I have mentioned. Um, my I have used this spell as a player and as of Friday as a DM as well. Rob has also, I believe, used it as well. Um,
Many times.
in both circumstances.
Yes, I've not. I don't think I've used detect thoughts against. I say against as a
Mm,
player when you're in your DMing. I
mm.
used it a lot on Arthur.
Oh, you had a great. I know you had your great old one Warlock. I wasn't sure if you'd done it as a dungeon master.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
loads.
That's cool.
A
That's what I thought.
certain bad guy had it, and I just never told you I was using it.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, the big thing. Right, so this spell's great. I recommend it for your wizards, your warlocks, your bards, your sorcerers, or anyone who can take it. Take it. It works great for detecting the presence of creatures. We had the first one shot Rob ever run for us. We had our warlock played by my friend Chris, who was played on a great old one warlock who used it to detect to see what presence was inside a warehouse.
Yes,
Great use of it. And then when I played as Emmerich, I use it quite a lot during sort of interrogations. Though I was always trying to play it fairly in the idea that because I was concentrating on this spell, I couldn't necessarily concentrate on in the interrogation, so I would have other people do it for me.
yes, yeah. I remember you doing that.
I just kind of didn't want to abuse it because that's my big issue with this spell is the abuse of it
Yeah.
more than anything else. Um, yes, I kind of abused it a little bit on Friday as a DM,
I won't say so.
but I didn't think I went overboard. And the dude's a high level wizard, so I mean, mm, probably well practiced with it.
he was all so the character you used it with, I
Mhm.
suppose for context for any listeners or viewers, was also he was an elf, so he was quite old, so you
Mhm.
can add social experience. He
Yes.
was a practiced detective. He was a detective by his trade, and he
Mhm.
had been one. I think you said out of game for probably a long, long time,
Yeah,
maybe
bit.
longer than my character has been alive
Mhm. Definitely.
in one way or another. And it's kind of what you sometimes come to expect with elves anyway.
Mhm.
So I don't think you did abuse it because I
Mhm.
think that your character, uh, clearly, as you mentioned, had the observant feat and
Mhm.
keen, no, maybe keen mind, but probably observant too.
He had
Um,
observant. He definitely. I didn't give him keen mind. It's not written in the thing, you know.
they were clearly maxed out intelligence.
Mhm.
I don't know what their charisma looked like, but it definitely wouldn't have been a negative for them to have being able to
I think strength
interact
might
with
have been their
us.
only negative.
Yeah,
It was.
um, and even then, like it's, yeah, I just think that the way that they used it worked for what that character was.
Mhm.
You know, they were subtle. They were trying to get information out of people, so they clearly had known that spell a long time and knew its ins and outs and knew its limits. And I think
Mhm.
that's important as a DM when
Mhm.
you're using something like this. Is as the DM know its limits, but as the NPC, does
Yeah.
the NPC know its
Mhm.
limits? People forget that sort of stuff
Mhm.
because players, you're just in the mind of your own character. So
Yeah.
like we do self-insert a lot, but we've talked about like metaing a little bit before, like how like
Mhm.
sometimes we fail on purpose because we want to add that to our knowledge repertoire and know,
Yes.
oh yes, those are immune to fire and that sort
Yes.
of stuff. Um, how long have you had detect thoughts as a spell? How many times have you
Mhm.
used it in your
Yeah. Yeah.
backstory in
Yeah.
the past? Like I think because of all that, if you actually, you know, think of all that, I don't think you abuse the spell at all. I think you
I wouldn't say necessarily. No, I think maybe abuse was the wrong word for me to use. I used it a little bit.
overused, maybe.
Hmm?
Overused, maybe? Is that what you were maybe going for?
Yeah, probably. It was.
Used it for more than a minute?
Oh, I definitely did that. Yes. Um, but it was. Yeah, I think the minute thing is just something you forget. Honestly, I forgot. I used to forget as Emmerich. I forgot on Friday. It's because a minute is really hard to do when you're not in combat to keep track of that. Because roleplay
It's
is both real
insanely
time
short.
but also not at the same time.
How many? So, like, if to really put context on this, a minute,
Hmm.
think of a game show. Think
Yeah.
of how many questions you can ask somebody in a minute and
Yeah.
how many replies they can actually give.
Well, I mean, it's a lot longer than people think a minute is.
I don't think I think it's the other way around. I think it's
Hmm.
insanely short
If
amount of
someone was
time.
to ask you to stand in front of a crowd and talk for a minute,
Oh yeah, that would feel like an eternity.
if it would, you would realize how long a minute is. Um. So yeah, I guess it's all about perspective, depending on the situation. Regardless, that's not really what I wanted to talk about.
All right, okay.
It
Sorry,
was
carry on.
so we'll start with surface thoughts, right? What is
Oh yeah.
it's what people consider a surface thought. Now, a lot of my issues with this spell may come from a particular very popular actual play D&D show.
I
Uh,
knew this was coming because I remember you complaining about this. I know exactly what you're going to say because I remember you complaining at the time.
it was right. It's a DM's fault, but it's also the player's fault. But if they're both
Yep.
doing it, I guess it's an agreement that that can be done. It still
Yeah.
kind of feels wrong for a level 2 spell to do what it was being used for. So surface thoughts are really like you think about the what is like when you speak in your own head. That is surface thought. There's no deeper thought to it. That is like bare. And if someone's talking, especially with the way my brain works, what they're saying is their surface thoughts. There isn't
Yes.
much more to it than that. You're not getting
Or if I say
emotions.
something to you, if I
Mm,
say pink dinosaur, you think of a pink dinosaur.
yeah. Um, I would even say that might even be a deeper thing than a surface thought. I
I
think
would
so.
have it as a thought personally.
I mean, yeah, but I think surface thought is anything that it takes a conscious effort to think about.
Yeah,
That is what I consider surface thought. It's a conscious effort to think about something.
yeah,
Whereas I've seen it where it's like give them everything despite the fact never having made the wisdom save.
yeah. I think
Um,
for me, surface thoughts are anything you would see in your mind's eye,
yeah, I think to some degree.
unless you really want to think up like, because like going deeper, kind of because you have to pass a save to go deeper,
Mm,
means that you're maybe probing into areas
of the
that
unconscious.
yeah, beyond conscious that people don't realize they're thinking about. Um, so like that's not necessarily on the mind's eye.
No. Yeah.
So that's kind of the way I think of it.
Well, because it does even say it talks about like you gain insight into its reasoning, which
Yeah.
which I mean the following bits kind of would give you that anyway, but its emotional state and what looms large in its mind. So something that so for example, it says something it worries over, loves, or hates. So you're understanding emotions, emotional connection, looking at um yeah, it shouldn't be used to view someone's memories because that is not an emotion. It does not do that. What if you want to have an idea of someone's memories? That is what the later section of the spell talks about, which is questions verbally directed at the target creature naturally shape the course of its thoughts. So this spell is particularly effective as a part of an
Yeah.
interrogation, which is what I used it for, which is why I was asking the questions I wanted to ask because it helps form what the image is in the mind that you're looking for.
Mm.
That shouldn't just organically happen just because like right, I want to go into this person's mind to see if they remember this. I've not mentioned this, but I'm going to see if
Yeah.
they remember it. You're not looking at it as if it's a catalogue of memories or a library of
Yeah.
memories.
You're not mining for dreams.
No.
It's yeah, so like I wanted the ability to do that as Arthur
Mm,
because he was a great old warlock. He was obsessed with secrets, forbidden knowledge, hidden things. Or it was when I first started playing him. He had a definite growth path that I feel he quite successfully went, especially now that that campaign is over.
mm-hmm,
Um, so for the first year or so of me playing him, I really wanted the ability to almost extract information from people. But I knew it didn't work with that spell. I never used that spell to do it. I was just like, DM, give me ways to do this. So
mm-hmm,
eventually funnily enough, we mentioned the spell today, Gaius.
mm,
I got a magic item, which was a book called The Vortex Personality. It was homebrew. It was a fantastic idea by Ross, my DM and my Monday group that was the DM for that campaign. Um, I had to write down a story in this book as the character, not myself. I
yeah,
didn't physically write anything. I just said what I wrote.
yeah,
They had to then pass the save for the spell um, by reading what I wrote. So I had to convince them to read the information that I wrote, and that would then hit them with the guess. So if I wanted them to give me information, that's a way to like you kind of charming someone or
yeah,
suggesting
yeah.
charming someone into giving you the information. So that was my extraction technique.
Mm.
Detect thoughts doesn't really
I
or
don't know.
shouldn't really give you it.
I think if I'm not mistaken, there are spells, higher level spells that will give you more. Oh, do is there not a dream spell that allows you to
Dream works more the other way.
the
You
other way?
go and talk to somebody in their dream. I've used
Yeah.
it many
So
times
if you go,
to
if you're
help
going
people.
into their dream, though, aren't you?
Yeah, but you're molding it yourself.
Or you mold the dream.
Yeah,
Okay.
you create the. I actually played it a little bit like the interrogation room in Altered Carbon.
Okay. Yes. 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 Yes.
So I created my, but it was Arthur's like almost the front portion where his
Mm.
desk would be of his lecture theatre because he was a university professor in his backstory. So it was like this kind of blackboard behind him, big oak or
Mm.
maybe mahogany desk, loads of stuff, and he was there, kind of sat at the desk, and that was his sane one that he did. I mean, I did also make one of the players dream quite often that I was peeling the skin off his leg with a potato peeler. That's different.
That's actually ultra common, right?
Well, yeah, yeah.
Making them die over and over again. Oh,
I mean, he never
such a good thing.
died. He just, and then sometimes he was peeling the skin off his own leg. And yeah,
Mm.
dream's a fun spell. Use it to troll your other players when you're a player. It's great.
But back to Detect Thoughts. Yes, I moaned about people being a bit too. It's a second level. It's kind of like where people more. I think people more do this with cantrips. They try and get away with a lot for a cantrip.
Yes.
It's a minor illusion, right? It's a minor illusion.
Yeah.
Um, it's prestidigitation, not freaking major image, right? Like, so people do a lot more with that, but then you start seeing levels, especially early on. You think, oh, second level spell, this is great. But you're still only a baby. You're only a baby wizard.
It's kind of a problem that sometimes you get where you have that player mentality of trying to get away with murder, almost like
Mm.
getting away with as much as they can, and then a DM that is a bit of a yes man or a yes woman um,
You do
will
want
always.
to let your players do things that they want to do. I think there there is a challenge though in getting them to feel like
Middle
they've
ground.
earned it.
Yes, yeah, for sure. You need a good middle ground because the payoff is greater if you've earned
Mm.
it
Oh yes,
as well.
yes, I
I
would
think
100% agree.
I think an interesting thing to come up with as well with detect thoughts.
Mm.
You'd have to approach it in the right way because you wouldn't want it to come across as the DM says no,
Mm.
which is the bad version of the opposite to what we were just talking
Mm.
about. But there is actually a real world condition called aphantasia.
Yes.
My girlfriend has it. She has no mind's eye. She can't imagine things. It's just black in there. It's just the darkness of space. Sometimes she can change the color, but if I say that the classic test is think of a red apple,
Mm.
and can you think of a completely photoreal one? Can you interact with it, spin it around,
It's
do other
cartoon
things with it?
until I start focusing on it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, get a potato peeler out, start peeling the apple, then peel someone's. I mean, yeah, that's dream spell. Sorry.
I've got
Um,
one of the things that you push down in the middle and it breaks it open.
yeah. So the kind of extra imagination that we're broaching on there is hyperaphantasia, where you
Mm.
can be really imaginative and you can retain photorealistic and just create what you need. That's different. So, like, you've got a complete spectrum of
Mm.
people's ability to imagine.
Mhm.
If you did detect thoughts on somebody that had aphantasia and couldn't imagine things, yeah, you can still remember things, but you're remembering things almost as though they are like white text on a black background. That's how
Mm.
it's been described to me by multiple people with aphantasia. 'Cause weirdly, one of my players in my Monday group has it as well. Um, and it's an interesting thing to have to deal with as a DM because you have to be very specific in your descriptions of an environment because they're trying to construct this environment as you're describing it using words and facts. But if you're doing detect thoughts on an NPC that also might suffer it, that would be quite an interesting challenge for your players.
Yeah. I mean, it's also something players. I mean, I never, until you brought it up now, really considered it as a thing. But it's something you should probably consider with your characters because it makes an interesting aspect. Somebody who, for example, Timothy, or played by Steph, right? Highly
Yep.
artistic character, not autistic, artistic character. Um, potato tomato. Um, but would have very vivid imagination. Ergo,
Yes.
probably those surface thoughts a little more vivid. And I give it because it was Steph I was dealing with on Friday when I was doing detect thought. She gave me a lot of information. I think she did
Yep.
pretty. I think she did a great job with it, if I'm honest.
Yep. I think it's pretty honest in
Um,
the way it works.
and then when I was diving in, I was getting the emotions, I was getting these images, these things that were flashing up as well. It was a combination of everything. Quite liked it. But then on the other end, you've got people who are just like completely lack of any imagination as a character, not as a person, as a character.
Yeah.
I think that's less common when you're designing a character. But I think if we've had any, I would argue maybe Morthos, right? Luke's monk.
Yeah, because he was very matter of fact, very task orientated, and didn't really
Mm,
go that like he hyper focused on
mm,
whatever task he thought was important at the time.
mm.
I don't think he really sat there and thought about things too much.
No,
Um,
quite weird for a monk
yeah,
who
well,
the whole thing, but he was
he just
Batman.
already had in he already had inner peace.
Yeah, yeah,
His inner peace was the darkness of his mind.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it would be if I was actually to kind of I suppose to get all of our players to think about which characters had the
Mm.
most vivid imagination. Um, I could probably guess that maybe Beringer didn't have too much of an overly vivid imagination until he was spurred into action, like with the bacon episode.
The bacon.
That was a funny one. Um, I think I'm trying to think of any of my characters that wouldn't have had an overly vivid imagination, but I think like I probably don't really play my characters that way. Don't know. I'm
It
trying to think of who else
depends.
might have
Like,
one.
if all right, so if we look at my characters, like, so Lod is a big kid. If I'm honest,
Yes.
has an active imagination.
Yeah.
Like, he's a big kid. Um, he's not particularly bright, but that bright doesn't necessarily equal intelligence.
No.
Imagination, sorry. Um, Emmerich, I would think, is a detective, has to be able to put things together.
Yeah.
I think he'd
Able
have,
to do that.
yeah, I think he'd have a decent imagination as well. Who else have I played? I played the vampire
Um,
guy. Probably not. I don't know. He was pretty much supposed to be
Tor.
edgy. Hmm?
Tor.
Tor. Tor middling. Tor, if it's a spectrum, he's in the middle because
Yeah.
he believes in a god that he has never met.
Actually, I'll tell you which of my characters wouldn't have had a very active imagination. Alexander Ashbourne, the vampire monk, and
Mm.
then eventually the vampire barbarian that I played in a different one. Um, yeah, he didn't think about a whole lot uh, unless it involved
Blood.
hunting the things that he liked to hunt. Um,
Unless it was, yes, hunting, drinking blood,
yeah.
vampire things.
Um, so yeah, I think almost in a similar way to what we described of Morthos, like
Mm.
he had his drive and he didn't really stray too far from that in his thoughts. Um, but that said, I think if you were to if you were to do like the aphantasia test on him, he would pass it. He wouldn't be overly creative, but he would be like maybe
Mm.
everything he would think of would be red, but
Red and
he'd be
black.
in red scale. But other than that, I think he'd be fine to be able to think of things.
Like,
So
everything is darkness. Uh,
I'm not I'm not going to do my Bane impression on stream.
It's
But yeah,
like, that's Morthos. He's just Batman. But I was easily distracted then. We both did it. We
yes.
really going off topic this episode, but it's fine. It's all good. I think it's a better way to look at spells rather than going through the nitty gritty of the stat block, whatever you want to call it. It's probably a better way just to look at it in that way. We have some time left, a little bit of time. Before we finish. I was tempted to throw in our another improv exercise thing, but I don't really think we have time for it.
No, we'll dedicate a bit more time to that next
We
week.
can do it another time. It's always good to keep that in the back pocket. Pull back on. This is kind of a topic I didn't tell you beforehand because I only really thought of it as we've been chatting now. And I will and it will we can take goes kind of doing it, but we had it. I think we talked about it in the original list of topics that we came up with. The idea of like funny stories from previous sessions, or especially ones that taught us something.
Mm.
Because I have one. and I always
Okay.
like to tell it because I like to tell it because it's also one that Rob wasn't involved in, so it was pre-Rob.
Oh, okay.
So we were playing in the world of my homebrew world of Nuri. This is the first campaign we played in Nuri. Our former player, hopefully coming back one day, Stephen, and his daughter, my sister-in-law, Susie, as well, was present. Um, and they were in a town called Crossroads, which is in the middle of a desert. It is at a crossroads in the desert. It is an oasis of sorts. It is a town that is run by criminals who control the supply of water. This criminal organization known as the Council of Crossroads. The players had visited a den for thieves, essentially. I can't remember what the name of the guild was, the Thieves Guild, essentially, but it was run by a blind sort of master thief, and they had gone to visit him. He had, as a almost as a test and as a curiosity, pickpocketed Susie's character, who was called V, no relation to Cyberpunk. Um, VI. Um, had been, and she had no idea. He's a master thief. He's very good at what he does. It was, I can't. I remember just thinking there would be pickpocketed. I'm going to use his stats, even if technically it wasn't him who did it. But it was they got pickpocketed while they were in there. The party then split up. I believe my brother Luke was still playing at the same time as well. He had gone with another player to scout out a location, whilst Susie and Stephen had gone to a place called Rikishi's. Now, Rikishi's is a series of very large tents, essentially almost like a tent city in itself, but they're all connected. Almost like a maze inside these tents. But Rikishi's is a place you can go to get whatever your desires are. It's a bar. It's got the bar. It's a brothel. It's a place where the most twisted people in the world probably go because they can get away with doing some very dark and disturbing things. But it's yes, it's a place that will fulfill all your desires, run by a criminal organization, formerly headed by a man called Rakesh, whose head was taken, and so no longer is in charge, and instead it was led by this quite overweight, large gentleman, who they were going to try and speak to. But they thought, oh, they had not. This is a lesson: is to take notes or listen when your DM is talking, not realize what the place really was that they were going to, despite having been told about it, and thought,
Yeah.
we should get food before we go because we've been in the desert. we've got some water, but we should eat. We'll go. I'm sure they'll have food there. It sounds like an inn or a tavern or something. And I was going, oh, no, um, more like a a den for slavery and dark
Debauchery.
desires. Yeah, slavery and debauchery. Anyway, so they go there and there's like a bar and they're like, "Oh, can we order food here?" And they were like, "I guess we do food if you want it, I guess." So they went and sat down at this little table to order food when a slave was to attend them as their sort of waiter, and they ordered some food. I don't remember what they ordered a long time ago, years ago, so I don't remember what they ordered. But they ordered. They got their food. They were gonna pay when they suddenly realised they had no coin to pay with. Now, to me, the obvious thing was perhaps that den of thieves we were just in, full of pickpockets and robbers, might have taken my money. But no, their automatic thought was the goblin we just spoke to, who was our waiter, must be the one who stole from us, because it was the last character we met. So they proceed
That's
to
player logic, is that?
that is they proceed to get on their feet, and Stephen, who's playing a barbarian, went over and basically beheaded the goblin. Just pinned him to the ground and took his head with a hand axe. Poor little fella was a slave already to be beheaded by. Now this got him into a whole world of trouble because then they obviously owed the slaver a slave for all the monetary cost of such, which they never paid back. They skipped town before they needed to.
Don't blame him, to be honest.
But man, that was they jumped to some big conclusions there. That was just like must be who could have stolen us from us has to be the goblin. A little
Yeah.
bit of in D&D racism, perhaps.
Yeah.
To think that that was the goblin, and the lesson I learnt was maybe be willing to put reins on your players when they're jumping to some wild conclusions, and perhaps prompt them earlier about missing items from their inventory.
Well, I see. I don't know. I'm kind of on your side on that one. Like, if they don't know that it's gone missing and they've not needed money, I I did this myself the other week.
Hmm,
I was walking up to work on the morning, stopped at McDonald's to get a Mackey's breakfast. Went up to the thing, the
hmm,
big tablet that you order on. Pushed the buttons, ordered my bacon, sausage double egg McMuffin meal, blah blah blah. Go to pay. Now I'm going to work, so I've got all my stuff in my bag. I don't always have a bag with me, but when I do, I keep my wallet in my bag.
hmm.
So I get my bag off my shoulder, go to get the wallet out of the like the inner pocket that's inside the main
Yeah.
area. It's empty, and I'm like, oh shit, left my wallet at home. It was in my coat pocket, but I couldn't feel it. Like it's one of those coats that I will wear a hoodie underneath. It's the coat that only comes out when it hits this time of year.
Yeah.
It was the first rainy day that I was walking to work from the train station.
Hmm.
Um, so I had the hoodie and coat combination on because I don't have a raincoat. Um, so yeah, there was good reason that I'd not realised
Hmm.
my wallet wasn't in its usual place.
Yes.
It was in the pocket, and you could argue that I should have felt that it was there, but I was oblivious.
No, no,
So
no. Okay. I've done that many times.
that's my poor passive perception for you.
Yeah, I think less about like telling. I think it's more like you don't go, "Oh, you've been pickpocketed." What I mean is like, "All right, you want to go there? Are you sure you've got the coin to do it?" And they go, "Oh yeah, yeah, we've got this much." And they go, "Have
Yeah,
you? Have you?" And then they go, "Wait," and then they can do the pat down. Like, um,
I
oh yeah.
think
Well, we know like Stephen, his mind works in a different way, so he's
I
not
think I would.
surprised that he jumps to that conclusion. But
Well, yeah, yeah, no. It's the point of escalation that I would have focused on as a DM.
hmm,
Um, so I'd have probably have said, all right, before you attack, you've gone from sitting at a table, finding out your money's gone, to looking at this goblin and going and sinking an axe in his neck. Are you sure you don't want to put some more stepping stones on that journey?
hmm.
I'd have probably have like attempted that. If they
I
ultimately want to
don't
do
even
what they
remember
want to do,
if
then
yeah, I don't even remember if I said, "Are you sure?" or are you sure you want to do that?" or something like that. Because I still think Stephen he would have gone yes anyway. I think the point would have been stopping. I remember everyone else kind of being like shocked, like everyone who was playing at the time is being taken aback by what's happened, the brutality of what just happened. Um, Makes you question not whether they're the good guys.
100%, yeah.
Um,
Um,
it was, it was so funny. It was funny.
I'd have. I mean, it's not that dissimilar from the Strad incident, the instant escalation.
Hmm, the impulsiveness.
Yes, yeah, it's the impulse I think that Stephen had
Yeah.
was to be like, okay, I have to commit to violence right now. Which has your new favorite phrase? you meet your uncle consequences.
You do. Uncle consequences.
Yeah.
Well, life is cause and effect. There's always consequences. But yes,
Yes.
that's one of my favorite stories to talk about. We have, I think it's actually a good time to talk, to end it, sorry. We have just talked. To end
Yeah, yeah.
it, if you're okay with that, Rob.
Fine by me.
Okay, cool. Well, that has been another episode of the Oakley Big Dice podcast, episode number 9, with your hosts, Dan and Rob. You can find this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. It'd be very good, very nice of you.
Much appreciated.
We'd be most appreciative if you were to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all our various social medias. Always Oxley Big Dice. Give us a like on the podcast. Check out our shorts and our reels. Give them a like as well. Basically, post clips from the podcasts of moments that were usually funny or insightful. But yes, that is all from us. We will see you next week, live on Twitch, 8 p.m. UK time. Go over there, follow us if you wish as well. Well, that's it. I don't have anything else to add. So I hope all your D20s roll natural 20s and not natural
Except for you, Joe.
ones, except for Joe.
Yeah, thank you for coming, guys. Hope you had fun.